I never imagined that a single evening could shatter 8 years into irreparable fragments, but my girlfriend Kate managed exactly that at an absurdly expensive bistro last Tuesday night. The place was called Le Jardin, one of those establishments where they serve microscopic portions on oversized plates and charge you triple for the ambience. We'd arrived fashionably late with her usual entourage, the kind of people who treat dining as performance art, constantly angling for the perfect shot, ordering elaborately garnished dishes they'd barely taste. Each woman at that table had her phone positioned strategically beside her wine glass, ready to capture any moment worthy of their carefully curated feeds. The conversation centered on some social media personality's latest scandal, dissecting every detail of someone's failed product launch or botched collaboration. These were topics that couldn't interest me less, but I'd learned over the years to nod politely and let the noise wash over me. The restaurant itself was beautiful, I'll give it that. Soft amber lighting from vintage Edison bulbs, exposed brick walls adorned with abstract art that probably cost more than my car, and a sommelier who spoke about wine with the reverence most people reserve for religious texts. The waitstaff moved with choreographed precision, their black uniforms crisp and professional. Everything was designed to make you feel like you were part of something exclusive, something special. Kate had been in unusually high spirits all evening, laughing louder than necessary, touching my arm occasionally in that performative way she'd developed over the past year. I should have recognized it as a warning sign, but I was distracted by the menu, trying to calculate whether the $40 salmon was actually worth it or just priced for pretension. Then Kate decided to unleash what she considered comedic genius, and everything changed in an instant. She rose slightly from her seat, wine glass elevated like she was addressing royalty at some state dinner, and proclaimed loudly enough for surrounding tables to hear, "We're finished. This relationship is over." Her voice cut through the ambient conversations and soft jazz playing overhead. Her eyes glittered with calculated mischief, that particular spark she got when she knew she was about to get attention, while her companions grabbed their phones with practiced speed, fingers already swiping to camera mode, giggling in breathless anticipation like children about to witness a magic trick. The entire restaurant seemed to pause. Forks stopped midway to mouths. The couple at the adjacent table froze, their eyes wide with that mixture of shock and guilty pleasure people feel when witnessing someone else's drama. Even our waiter, approaching with our entrees, stopped dead in his tracks. Then came her punchline, delivered with rehearsed timing and theatrical flair. "Totally joking. God, you should see your faces." The table exploded into chaos. Glasses clinked together in celebration. Shrill laughter pierced the air like shattering crystal, everyone acting like they'd witnessed the most groundbreaking comedy of the decade. Kate's friend Veronica was practically shrieking, her perfectly manicured hand pressed against her chest as if she couldn't contain her amusement. Another friend, Jessica, was already typing furiously on her phone, no doubt crafting the perfect caption for this hilarious moment to share with her followers. I didn't smile, not even politely. Not even the tight, forced smile I'd perfected over years of enduring her friends' conversations about juice cleanses and influencer marketing strategies. I sat completely still, my hands resting on the white linen tablecloth, watching her perform for an audience instead of considering the man who'd stood beside her through everything that truly mattered. 8 years of showing up. 8 years of being her constant, when everything else in her life shifted and changed. I thought about her mother's passive-aggressive remarks about my career choices at Thanksgiving dinners, how she'd asked loudly whether systems analysts were still relevant in today's economy, whether I'd considered something more prestigious. I'd smiled through it, held Kate's hand under the table while she pretended not to hear. I remembered the 3-hour drive to her grandmother's deathbed in Tucson, how we'd left at midnight because Kate got the call and couldn't bear the thought of not saying goodbye. I'd driven through the night while she dozed fitfully in the passenger seat, waking every 20 minutes in a panic, asking if we'd make it in time. We did. Barely. And I'd stood in that hospital corridor for 6 hours, bringing her terrible vending machine coffee and holding her while she cried. There was the night of her father's stroke, how I'd held her through her terror and grief, made all the phone calls she couldn't bear to make, coordinated with her siblings, dealt with the insurance companies and medical staff. The months of recovery afterward, driving her to the rehabilitation center every Sunday so she could sit with him during his physical therapy sessions. Job transitions, family emergencies, the countless small crises where I'd been her anchor, her steady ground when everything else felt like quicksand. The time she lost her job and spiraled into depression for 3 months, barely leaving the apartment. I'd been there every single day, cooking meals she barely touched, sitting beside her in silence when words felt impossible, never once suggesting she should just get over it. But right then, in that moment, I wasn't her partner of nearly a decade. I wasn't the man who knew she needed exactly 2 minutes of silence when she first woke up before she could handle conversation. I wasn't the person who remembered her grandmother's recipes and made them on difficult anniversaries. I was her prop, a setup for tomorrow's group chat comedy, a punchline to be laughed about and shared and eventually forgotten. I folded my napkin deliberately, each crease precise and intentional, and retrieved my wallet from my jacket pocket. I placed 5 $20 bills beneath my water glass, more than sufficient for both our meals, the overpriced bottle of Merlot she'd insisted on, and a generous tip for our waiter, who didn't deserve to suffer because of this disaster. The bills sat there, crisp and green against the white tablecloth, a final transaction completing our business. I stood without drama, no chair scraping loudly, no theatrical gestures of my own, just the quiet dignity I'd learned during my 6 years of military service. The kind of composure that comes from learning to control your reactions, even when everything inside you is screaming. "Wait, babe, come on," Kate called out, her laughter faltering slightly, confusion creeping into her voice. "Don't be ridiculous. It's just fun. We're having fun." I didn't respond. Didn't look back. Didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction she could dissect later with her friends, turning my anger into another anecdote about how men can't take a joke. I walked past the bar where a lone businessman nursed a scotch and stared at his phone with tired eyes. Past the host's stand where the maitre d' gave me that subtle nod, a gesture of recognition that passed between older men, acknowledgement of a boundary crossed, a limit finally reached. His eyes said he'd seen this scene play out before in different variations, knew exactly what was happening. Outside felt like stepping into an entirely different universe. The spring air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of blooming magnolias from the tree-lined street and the distant possibility of rain. The city stretched out before me, alive with its own rhythms and stories that had nothing to do with my unraveling relationship. Their manufactured laughter still echoed faintly through the restaurant's heavy glass windows as I walked away, each step taking me further from the life I'd known. I didn't go home immediately. The thought of sitting in traffic, trapped in my car with only my thoughts for company, felt unbearable. Instead, I wandered city blocks for hours, my dress shoes clicking against pavement that still held the warmth of the day. I passed shuttered boutiques with mannequins frozen in their window displays, all-night diners where shift workers nursed endless cups of coffee and exchanged tired jokes with waitresses who'd heard them all before. I walked past a small park where a homeless man had set up camp on a bench, his worldly possessions contained in 2 shopping carts arranged like walls around his sleeping area. Past a 24-hour bodega, where the clerk barely looked up from his phone as customers came and went. Past couples holding hands and laughing at private jokes, their happiness feeling like something from a foreign film I couldn't quite understand. The city revealed itself differently at this hour. Without the daylight crowds and purposeful rushing, it became a place of quiet revelations and solitary figures. A woman in scrubs stood at a bus stop, her eyes closed, swaying slightly with exhaustion. 2 teenagers skateboarded past, their wheels creating rhythmic patterns on the concrete. A taxi driver leaned against his yellow cab, smoking a cigarette and staring at nothing in particular. I walked until my dress shoes raised painful blisters on both heels and the burning sensation behind my eyes, that pressure that comes before tears, cooled into something crystalline and clear. The physical pain was almost welcome, something concrete and manageable compared to the emotional chaos. Around midnight, I caught my reflection in the darkened window of an antique shop. The glass was old, slightly warped, giving my image a dreamlike quality. I saw myself clearly for perhaps the first time in months. 57 years old, graying at the temples in that distinguished way some men achieve, former Army logistics officer, former systems analyst, still reliable, still competent, still standing despite everything. The man in that reflection looked tired, but not broken. Weathered but not destroyed. I studied my own face like I was meeting a stranger, noting the lines around my eyes, the set of my jaw, the way I held my shoulders despite the exhaustion. I whispered to my reflection, my breath creating a small fog on the cold glass. "We're finished." Unlike her theatrical declaration, unlike the performative announcement designed to shock and amuse, I meant every single syllable. The words settled into the night air with the weight of absolute truth. When I finally reached our shared condo near 2 a.m., my phone showed 17 unread messages from Kate. I scrolled through them without opening any, watching the previews shift from confusion to annoyance to the first hints of concern. "You're overreacting. Everyone thought it was hilarious. Don't make this bigger than it is. Seriously, where are you? This is getting weird now. Are you actually mad about a joke?" I ignored them all, each notification a ghost of a relationship that had already ended in my mind. Instead, I moved through our apartment with military precision, each action deliberate and final. I packed methodically, one large military duffel bag with essential items carefully selected. My everyday clothes, toiletries, important documents. My grandfather's Rolex Submariner that had survived the Korean War, still keeping perfect time after all these decades, the weight of family history on my wrist. My discharge papers from the Army, certificates of commendation I'd earned but never displayed. Financial records she'd always dismissed as tedious paperwork, tax returns, investment statements, property documents, all the boring details she couldn't be bothered with. And a framed photograph of my daughter Rachel from her medical school graduation, her smile bright with achievement, her arm around my shoulders. Looking at Rachel's photo, I felt a surge of clarity. She'd never liked Kate, though she'd been too polite to say so directly. But I'd caught the looks, the carefully neutral responses when I'd mentioned Kate's latest social media project or influencer collaboration. Rachel had seen through the performance from the beginning, had probably been waiting for me to see it too. I left the apartment key beside the espresso machine, that expensive Italian contraption Kate had insisted we needed despite the fact that I was the only one who ever used it. The key sat there on the marble countertop, small and silver and final. No explanatory letter, no emotional manifesto, no detailed breakdown of every grievance and disappointment. Just the key, positioned deliberately like evidence at a crime scene. Then I sat down at her expensive MacBook Pro, the one she'd bought specifically for content creation, but mostly used for online shopping, and systematically transferred my exact share from our joint accounts. Not vindicatively, not taking a penny more than what was mathematically mine, just precisely and methodically. I'd always been good with numbers, with systems, with ensuring everything balanced perfectly. We had no marriage license, no binding legal contracts, no shared mortgages or legal entanglements beyond the lease we were both on. Just a shared existence apparently erasable over overpriced appetizers and performative wine pairings. The bank transfers took less than 15 minutes to complete. 8 years reduced to digital transactions, money moving invisibly through networks, severing connections with the click of a mouse. I deleted our shared Google Calendar with its color-coded entries for planned weekend trips and dinner reservations. Removed my photos from our couple's Instagram account, watching years of carefully curated memories disappear with each deletion. Erased every digital breadcrumb, every trace of connection, every suggestion that we'd built something together. Then I drove across town to my friend Vincent's place, a guy from my old Army unit who understood operational discipline and the value of strategic silence. Vincent lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a working-class neighborhood Kate would have described as transitional, with barely concealed disdain. He answered the door in sweatpants and a faded band t-shirt, took one look at my face, and asked no questions. "Need to go dark for a while," I said simply. He nodded, stepped aside to let me in. "Guest room's yours. Stay as long as you need." I handed him my iPhone, that expensive device that had become an electronic leash. "Can you keep this in a drawer somewhere? Don't turn it on, don't charge it, just let it die." Vincent took the phone, understanding immediately. "Done. You need anything else? Food? Beer? Someone to sit with? Just silence. That I can provide, brother." And he did. Vincent asked nothing, demanded no explanations, simply gave me space and the kind of quiet support that veterans understand instinctively. By the time the sun started rising over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I had completely vanished from Kate's world. She woke around 7:30 a.m. expecting her usual good morning text, something I'd sent every single morning for 8 years without fail. Even on days we'd argued, even when I was traveling for work, even from hospital waiting rooms and airport terminals. The consistency had been my way of saying I was there, I was present, I was committed. Instead, absolute silence. Digital void. The kind of absence that creates its own presence. The bedroom was empty, my side of the bed already cold, the impression of my body faded from the memory foam mattress. The bathroom counter cleared of my belongings, shaving kit, cologne bottles, the electric razor she'd bought me for Christmas. The coffee maker sat unused and silent, because I'd always been the one who programmed it the night before, ensuring hot coffee awaited when we woke. But what truly registered, what sent the first spike of genuine unease through her morning fog, was the apartment key. Placed deliberately beside the handcrafted ceramic bowl we'd bought together in Barcelona 3 summers ago, during what she'd called the most Instagram-perfect trip ever. The key sat there like an accusation, like an answer to a question she hadn't yet thought to ask. She opened the refrigerator by pure habit, muscle memory guiding her hand to where the meal prep containers should be. Every Sunday for years, I'd organized the week's lunches and easy dinners, labeled Tupperware with dates and heating instructions, ensured we'd have healthy options during busy weeks. Nothing remained except her expensive organic salad dressings that cost $12 a bottle, half-finished rose wine, and the organic oat milk she purchased for photos but never actually consumed. The absence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. Her first text arrived at 7:58 a.m., still casual, still assuming this was some kind of temporary sulking situation that would resolve itself by lunchtime. "Where'd you disappear to? Forget your keys? Coffee's getting cold. P.S. You're being dramatic, LOL. No response. No read receipt." The message sat there in digital limbo, undelivered, unread, floating in the void. By 8:30 a.m., she'd sent 3 more messages, each one slightly less casual, slightly more concerned. "Okay, seriously, where are you? This isn't funny anymore. John, I'm starting to worry." By 9 a.m., her tone had shifted entirely, the casual facade crumbling. "Okay, seriously, this isn't funny anymore. Call me immediately. This is ridiculous." 3 rapid calls followed in succession, all routing straight to voicemail. Not the normal voicemail greeting I'd recorded, but that dead electronic sound indicating powered off or disconnected service. The kind of silence that suggests intentional absence rather than a dead battery or poor signal. She didn't leave voicemails because what could she possibly say? How do you leave a message for someone who's clearly chosen not to hear you? Desperate now, genuine panic starting to creep in around the edges of her annoyance, she called my office next. She'd only called me there a handful of times in 6 years, usually considering my work boring and beneath her interest. But now she needed answers. The receptionist who answered was Lily, a bright 24-year-old I'd personally trained during her first week, teaching her the phone systems and client management protocols with patience and encouragement. "Harrison Analytics, this is Lily speaking. How may I help you?" "Hi, yes, this is Kate Morrison. I'm looking for John Harrison." "I'm his, we're together. Is he in the office today?" A pause. A long-waited pause that made Kate's stomach clench. "I apologize, Ms. Morrison," Lily said with genuine sympathy in her voice, "but Mr. Harrison resigned yesterday, effective immediately. He came in after lunch, met with the partners, cleaned out his office, and left. He only provided a forwarding address for HR to send his final paperwork and benefits information." The words didn't make sense at first. Kate's brain refused to process them properly. "What? No, that's impossible. He would have told me. We would have discussed it. There must be some mistake. I'm very sorry, but there's no mistake. I helped him carry some boxes to his car myself yesterday afternoon. He seemed..." Lily paused, choosing her words carefully, at peace with his decision. Kate hung up without saying goodbye, her hand trembling as she lowered the phone. No 2-week notice. No transition period for colleagues he'd worked alongside for 6 years, mentoring younger analysts, building systems and processes from scratch. No goodbye lunch or retirement drinks. Just gone. Around 10:30 a.m., her hands shaking now with a combination of confusion and rising dread, she opened our banking app. The screen loaded slowly, or maybe it just felt slow because her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. My name had completely vanished from the joint account we'd maintained for 5 years. My profile picture, a photo of me from a company retreat, smiling in front of mountains, gone. The account label had reverted to her name alone. Kate Morrison checking. Like I'd never existed. Like those 5 years of shared finances, split rent and utilities and grocery bills, had been erased from history. What unsettled her most wasn't the separation itself, but the precision of it. When she looked at the transaction history, she could see exactly what I'd done. A single transfer, executed at 2:47 a.m., moving exactly my mathematically precise share from the joint account to an external account she didn't recognize. not vindicatively taking extra to punish her, not leaving her short out of spite, just perfectly, precisely, clinically taking what was legally and morally mine. I'd even left a small buffer, an extra $100, to account for any pending transactions that might have created an overdraft. Because even in leaving, even in ending things, I couldn't bring myself to be careless or cruel. She scrolled through months of transaction history, seeing the pattern of our life together. My consistent deposits every 2 weeks like clockwork, groceries from Whole Foods, utility payments, the rent that I'd always paid 60% of because I earned more, dinner reservations, gas station charges, the mundane financial archaeology of a shared existence. All of it ending with that single transaction at 2:47 a.m. By noon, she was frantically calling my old friends, people she'd barely tolerated during our relationship, considering them insufficiently sophisticated for her carefully curated social circle. Trevor, my college roommate who now ran a construction company, didn't answer. Probably saw her name on caller ID and hit decline, remembering the way she'd once described his wife as sweet but simple at a dinner party. Brian from my graduate program claimed he hadn't heard from me in months when she finally reached him. Complete fabrication. We'd grabbed beers 3 evenings prior at O'Malley's, our usual spot, where I'd shown him the video one of Kate's friends had posted to Instagram of her restaurant performance. Brian had watched it twice, his expression darkening with each viewing. "Brother," he'd said finally, setting down his pint glass with deliberate care, "you deserve better than that circus. You know that, right?" I'd nodded, already planning my exit, already calculating the logistics of disappearing. But Brian gave Kate nothing. "Sorry, haven't talked to John in ages. Hope you find him." By 2 p.m., she was pacing our 2,000-square-foot condo like something caged and desperate, calling her remaining friends, trying to control the narrative, trying to shape the story before it shaped her. No, he just completely vanished. Like disappeared into thin air. Over a joke. A harmless joke. Who does that? Who just evaporates like smoke? Her laughter sounded brittle even to her own ears, cracking at the edges like thin ice under weight. "Maybe it wasn't that harmless," her friend Jessica suggested quietly, and Kate hung up on her immediately. That evening, her pride already in tatters, she made the catastrophic mistake of texting my daughter Rachel. They'd never bonded, too many years of Kate's passive-aggressive comments about your biological mom, and we're just figuring things out, and I'm not trying to replace anyone. Rachel had been 14 when Kate and I started dating, old enough to see through performative kindness, young enough to resent the intrusion. But Rachel was also kind enough to maintain polite distance rather than open hostility. She called Kate by her first name, never stepmom, or any variation thereof. She came to obligatory dinners and smiled politely, and left as soon as socially acceptable. Rachel was 23 now, finishing her residency in emergency medicine, sharp as broken glass and possessed of her mother's ability to see through bullshit instantly. Kate's text tried for casual concern. "Hey Rachel, have you heard from your dad recently? Can you tell him I'm worried? This isn't like him." The reply arrived exactly 4 hours later. Rachel would have been finishing a shift, I realized later, would have seen the message during a break and chosen to wait, to let Kate stew before responding. The timing wasn't accidental. Rachel had inherited my strategic mind. He said to tell you the punchline landed perfectly. That single sentence hit Kate like physical force. She read it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, trying to find some other interpretation, some way it could mean anything other than what it so clearly meant. He'd told Rachel. Told her about the restaurant. Told her everything. And Rachel, who'd never particularly liked Kate anyway, was on his side. Completely, unambiguously on his side. That's when Kate finally cried. Not the photogenic tears she sometimes produced during romantic movies, the kind that made her eyes glisten beautifully without smudging her makeup. These were ugly, raw tears born from genuine terror. Her face crumpled, her breath came in gasps, mascara ran in black streaks down her cheeks. She wasn't crying because she missed me yet. That particular realization remained weeks away, would hit her gradually like water wearing away stone. She was crying because the man she depended on financially, emotionally, logistically had vanished with surgical precision. Not messy, not vengeful, not dramatic like her restaurant performance. Just clinically, devastatingly final. The man who paid 60% of the rent. Who handled all the paperwork and phone calls she found tedious. Who remembered to schedule car maintenance and dentist appointments. Who fixed whatever broke and solved whatever problems emerged. who provided the invisible infrastructure that allowed her to focus on her brand and her content creation without worrying about mundane details. Gone. She tried calling one more time around midnight, her hands trembling so badly she could barely hit the right numbers. This time the phone didn't ring even once, straight to an automated message in that pleasant, impersonal female voice. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Please check the number and try again. For the first time since that disastrous dinner, she fully understood this wasn't temporary sulking or a man storming out to nurse his wounded pride at a hotel for a few days. This was someone executing a detailed exit strategy she never saw coming, planned with the same methodical precision he brought to everything else. Within a week, her carefully constructed social ecosystem began collapsing like a house of cards in a hurricane. She posted her usual Sunday brunch photo from the same overpriced cafe, Bloom, where they served $20 avocado toast and $12 lattes with foam art. The same manufactured crew of influencer wannabes surrounded her, all perfect makeup and carefully disheveled hair. But now there was a conspicuously empty chair she hadn't bothered cropping out of the shot, a negative space that screamed louder than any caption. She'd tried to spin it as intentional, as aesthetic, as some kind of statement about independence and female empowerment. The caption read, "Brunch fixes everything. Girl gang, no drama, just mimosas. Living our best lives. Hashtag self-care, hashtag women supporting women, hashtag brunch life." But everything about the image screamed the opposite. Two of her usual companions were mysteriously absent, unfollowed her, she'd discover later, quietly distancing themselves from whatever disaster was unfolding. One friend was tagged but never reshared the post, a social media snub that everyone in their circle would notice and interpret. And Veronica, her best friend Veronica, the same Veronica who'd shrieked "Say it louder" while recording my public humiliation on her phone, looked completely off in the photo. Pale, hollow-eyed, like someone replaying a car accident in their mind on endless loop. Her smile looked forced, her eyes elsewhere, her hand clutching her mimosa glass like a lifeline. The comments on the post were sparse and generic. Gorgeous. Love this. Queens. The kind of engagement that signals polite distance rather than genuine enthusiasm. And notably absent were comments from the brands that usually engaged with her content, the boutiques and restaurants and lifestyle companies that had formed the financial backbone of her influencer aspirations. The first crack was subtle but devastating. A PR collaboration with a mid-tier skincare brand called Lumiere got cancelled. She'd been planning content for weeks, the unboxing video, the 30-day trial documentation, the before and after posts. The brand rep sent an apologetic email citing strategic realignment and budget constraints and focusing on different demographics. Except that same week, Lumiere posted glossy campaign shots with 3 other local influencers, women Kate knew and had always considered less successful than herself. The message was clear. They didn't want to realign away from influencer marketing. They wanted to realign away from her. Then came the devastating blow that Kate had been dreading, though she hadn't consciously acknowledged the fear until it materialized. The boutique that had been sending her complimentary designer handbags every quarter for 2 years, actual designer pieces worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, quietly terminated their brand ambassador partnership. No dramatic announcement, no explanation, no phone call or email. Just silence that grew louder with each day. The free products stopped arriving. The exclusive discount codes she'd shared with her followers expired and weren't renewed. Her direct messages to the brand's marketing director went unanswered, then eventually started bouncing back as if she'd been blocked. Kate convinced herself initially that it was all coincidental. Algorithm changes, market fluctuations, the natural ebb and flow of influencer partnerships. Anything except the slowly dawning realization that I had been quietly supporting more of her social infrastructure than she'd ever recognized or acknowledged. The upscale restaurant where they always secured the best table, despite never having a reservation. The owner, Marcus Bellamy, owed me a substantial favor. 2 years prior, I'd redesigned his entire kitchen workflow and inventory management system pro bono, turning his chaotic back-of-house operation into a model of efficiency. He'd told me repeatedly to bring anyone I wanted, anytime, and he'd take care of us. "For what you did for my business," he'd said, "it's the least I can do." Now when Kate tried to make reservations, the host politely informed her they were fully booked for the next 3 months. The photographers shooting all their content sessions, a talented guy named Chris who'd provided friendship rates on professional photo shoots that would have normally cost thousands of dollars. I'd been covering his website hosting, domain registration, and cloud storage for 3 years without ever mentioning it. Just quietly paid the annual fees every year, considering it a fair exchange for the discounted work he did. His rates for Kate suddenly jumped to full professional pricing. When she balked, suggesting he could give her the usual rate, he simply said he couldn't afford to work below market value anymore. The wine bar she loved name-dropping, Terroir, where she'd accumulated hundreds of dollars in loyalty points. My buddy from the hospitality industry, Felipe, had set up her entire rewards account as a personal favor to me, manually adding points she hadn't actually earned, giving her access to private tastings and exclusive bottles. She discovered this when she tried to redeem points and was told her account showed a zero balance. When she insisted there must be some mistake, the manager politely but firmly explained that there had indeed been a mistake, a data entry error that had been recently corrected. One by one, these invisible supports disappeared like supporting beams being removed from a structure. Reservation systems couldn't locate her accounts. Photographers were suddenly booked solid for months. Brands stopped responding to her pitches. Even the artisan coffee shop where she held her informal business meetings, really just gossip sessions disguised as networking, started acting like they'd never seen her before. The barista who used to draw hearts in her foam and comp her pastries suddenly couldn't remember her usual order. The cozy corner table she'd always claimed was perpetually occupied by other customers. The Wi-Fi password she'd always used stopped working. Her carefully curated world was quietly dismantling from within, and she was only beginning to understand the architecture of what we'd built and who had actually been building it. Thank you for watching the video to the end. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. A playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to is now displayed on the screen. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.